I want to tell you about the ghost dance, a movement that spread across the reservations of the American West in the 1890s. It was an attempt to cancel an apocalypse that was already underway. To understand the ghost dance, we need to understand the world it came from. This map shows the range of the American buffalo before European contact. Can compress a lot of time here. After the last ice age, after the extinction of the woolly mammoth and the Pleistocene megafauna, but before the arrival of Europeans, there's a stretch of about 10,000 years where humans and buffalo coexist in a kind of dynamic equilibrium. They're co evolving, they're transforming the landscape together through controlled burns and through the grazing of the grasslands. They create a system that supports tens of millions of bison across this continent. To the Plains tribes, the buffalo was everything. It provided material for food, shelter, clothing, tools, more uses than I could fit on this slide. Their entire way of life ran on this animal, the way ours runs on oil, sort of buffalo as infrastructure. But it didn't just provide material, it was considered sacred. In an animistic worldview, everything has a spirit. So this was a being you had to honor when you took its life. To overhunt, to take more than you needed, that was a violation of the balance that ordered the universe. So they had rituals and ceremonies to maintain it. This worldview also includes their sense of time. This is a winter count, a cyclical calendar that marks notable events. It transmits memory across generations through oral tradition. In Dakota, you don't ask how old someone is, you ask, how many winters do you have? The pictographs displayed here on the buffalo's hide depict years of disease, treaties made, major astronomical events. Its body becomes the very medium of transmission. The future in this worldview isn't a destination, it's a responsibility to your ancestors, something you maintain by following the ways you've inherited. Now compare that to a very different kind of millennialism. This is American Progress, probably the most famous popular depiction of manifest destiny. Look at the movement in the painting. Everything is heading west, the settlers, the stagecoach, the railroads, the telegraph wire, and leading them is this figure of Columbia, floating forward, bringing light into the darkness. The natives and the buffalo are being pushed off the edge of the frame. This is a worldview that sees Western expansion as a form of progress that is inevitable and necessary, and for many, a project that is divinely ordained. Two mutually exclusive ways of relating to the land in one frame. And the buffalo were part of this project. There's a growing market for hides and new factory methods for processing them. The profit motive leads to the industrialization of buffalo hunting as the buffaloes folded into the global economy. This also serves the settler project. By removing this animal, you can speed up the removal of the people who depend on it. This is probably the most famous image of that destruction. In just a few decades, the herds go from tens of millions to less than 1,000 animals in total. This photo shows a processing plant in Michigan, bones gathered from the plains, shipped by rail, distilled into charcoal for industrial applications. If your whole way of life revolves around the buffalo, this is the end of your world. This is the context for the coming of a prophet. This is Wovoka of the Paiute people in what is now Nevada. He grew up with a mix of influences, blending the traditional round dance of his tribe with ideas from Christianity that he encountered through ranchers and missionaries. In 1889, during a solar eclipse, Wovoka falls ill and has a vision. He comes out of it with a prophecy. If you perform this dance and live cleanly, the dead ancestors will return, the buffalo will come back, there will be peace and enough land for everyone. To people who had lost everything, their land, their livelihood, their relatives to disease and starvation, this is a message of hope, and it spreads. There's an irony to how it travels. The same railroads that facilitated the destruction of the buffalo and the dispossession of the tribes are now helping spread the ghost dance. This map, from historian Justin Gage, shows the network of trips visiting Wovoka and carrying his message back by rail, by letter, through intertribal delegations. At this time, natives on reservations had to ask permission to leave their designated lands, so a lot of this movement was unauthorized. As the message spreads across this network, it gets adapted by each tribal nation where it lands. It mutates with each hop. This is a depiction of the Lakota ghost dancers at Pine Ridge Reservation. They're dancing to restore a world that's already been destroyed. They are, in essence, trying to cancel an apocalypse that's already happened. The dancers move in a circle until they are exhausted. They fast and purify themselves to seek visions. This practice generates new prophecies as it spreads. For the Lakota, the vision expands. The restoration of the land, the ancestors, and the buffalo would now be accompanied by the removal of the white settlers. They also believe the dance, when combined with wearing sacred shirts, could make them spiritually invulnerable to bullets. Rumors of this sort make the US government very nervous. Fearing another costly uprising, the army is ordered to disarm the ghost dancers. During the process of trying to take a gun from a deaf man who has difficulty following their instructions, someone begins shooting. What follows becomes known as the Massacre at Wounded Knee in 1890. Over 300 Lakota men, women, and children were killed. They were flying a white flag. They had set out to surrender. The soldiers are awarded medals. The ghost dance movement gradually fades away. Wovuka hears the news and is devastated. He always intended for the movement to be one of peace. Wounded Knee becomes a symbol of the brutal repression of Native resistance. It would take decades of survival and activism for Native peoples to regain the right to openly practice their religious traditions. Those traditions remained outlawed or heavily suppressed for nearly another 90 years until the 1978 passage of the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. So, what would inhabiting this worldview feel like today? This is a satellite composite of the Eaton fire in Altadena from last year. To a people who saw the destruction of their whole way of life in one generation, images like this maybe would make a certain kind of sense to them. A world out of balance, a distorted relationship to the land. In their time, people didn't believe the buffalo could actually disappear. It seemed infinite, like the land itself. When the herds were driven to the brink of extinction, it forced a new kind of awareness that most people had never fully grasped. A recognition you could actually destroy the systems you depend on, that the earth has limits. That was its own kind of Copernican turn, a decentering of human mastery. Efforts to bring back the buffalo led to some of the first conservation movements in this country and the beginnings of the kind of ecological thinking that we're still building on now. The ghost dance was what scholars call avertive millennialism, a belief that performing the right actions can turn back catastrophe. Today, we have our own version of this. Instead of solar eclipse fever dream prophecies, we have supercomputer climate model predictions and international agreements we can't even stick to. So, climate change and the ghost dance. If there's a way that these two moments in history rhyme, maybe it's that they were trying to avert the end of their world, and we're trying to avert the end of ours.